Hello everyone, welcome back. So we're going to be reacting to Oversimplified World War 1 Part 2. Let's get right into the video.
With both sides stuck in a hard stalemate, they knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but about simply wearing each other down. The Allies had plenty of men to expend from its overseas dominions, and the British also started a naval blockade, so Germany couldn't import stuff, like food. Neither side really wanted a long grueling war though, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front. Idea number one, new frontiers. When the war first broke out, Australia was quick to take German New Guinea. The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa, and particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers and carriers by both sides, leading to a tragic loss of life for the native Africans. Some new
always what happened. So sad.
Combatants entered the war as well. The Allies' new friends were Italy and Japan. Japan was busy building itself an empire, so it was more than happy to take away German islands and colonies in East Asia. Italy actually had an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war, but after some tense relations, and then the Allies promising to give them some of Austria-Hungary's stuff, they switched sides. Italy opened up a front in the mountains here, but like everyone else, they were stuck in stalemate for most of the war. The Central Powers' new friend was a struggling empire in the Middle East. The Ottoman were divided on whether to actually join the war or not, since they had been exhausted by the recent Balkan Wars. Some of the politicians who did want to join went off on their own and fired some shells at Russia, and then came back and said, "Whoops, looks like we're at war now."
Yeah, now you're at war. God, dipshit.
The Ottoman entry into the war was of particular concern to the British, since the Middle East was full of oil, and Britain wanted all of that oil. First, the Ottomans tried to attack
now it's mainly the Americans who want the oil.
Russia in the Caucasus Mountains, but they weren't prepared for the cold, and many of them froze to death. Then they crossed miles of desert to take the Suez Canal from the British, but that failed too. Then the Allies tried to take the Dardanelles at Gallipoli in a long and hard trench warfare campaign, but that also failed. The Ottomans blamed their initial losses on the ethnic Armenians living within Ottoman territory, and the resulting Armenian genocide led to the deaths of 1.5 million people. Then the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan to try to convince the Arab tribes there to rise up in jihad against the British and attack India. But that plan failed, partly because the spies got bored, brewed their own alcohol, and got drunk.
That ain't a good idea, especially in a place like that.
Which is a bad thing to do in Afghanistan. All these new frontiers...
You know, I myself, I have a lot of hate for stuff like alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. Like, what? If it makes you drunk, I don't see the fun in that shit. I don't drink. I rarely drink. Maybe take one sip, but other than that, I rarely drink. You know, so being here, I've been surrounded by a lot of people who are into drugs, alcohol, and that shit destroys you. It will destroy your life. It will destroy your family. That's why I stay away from that shit at all costs. It's sad, especially when last year when I was in school, I had to say I was like the 30-40 people in my class. There are only maybe 3-5 good people in the class. The rest were just a bunch of fucking druggies. There were guys who went for weed, they went for other shit. You know, it's terrible. Some people would arrive drunk to class. Terrible shit.
Hadn't done much to change the war. Aware that the Allies had more men and supplies than them, the Germans knew they had to do something to break the stalemate. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare. No chemical weapons, no killing civilians. Basically, don't be jerks.
And they decided to go
against that. The Germans held a meeting and decided to be jerks. Zeppelin air raids commenced over British cities. They also started attacking the Allied trenches with chlorine gas, and they used submarines to sink civilian ships. One such civilian ship was the Lusitania, which had 159 Americans on board when it was sunk, further swaying U.S. opinion against the Germans. Not to be Americans on board when it was sunk, further swaying...
Yay, Germany. Germany, please. Someone's about to get liberated in America. Fuck yeah.
Swaying U.S. opinion against the Germans. Not to be completely unfair to the Germans, the Allies also engaged in chemical warfare soon after.
All sides do.
And they had been hiding anti-submarine weapons on their civilian ships, which let the Germans justify their attacks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still hadn't dealt with Serbia, so the Central Powers enlisted some help. Bulgaria wished it was bigger and was still bitter about losing the Second Balkan War. The Central Powers promised to make all of Bulgaria's wildest dreams come true if they helped, so they signed on, and together they knocked out Serbia. The Serbian troops
Damn.
retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary entered Albania in a friendly invasion to chase out the
Friendly
Serbians,
invasion, yeah,
many
right.
of whom escaped by sea.
Bullshit.
It's 1916, and a lot is happening. As if they didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more to the list. Portugal had been getting a bit chummy with the Allies behind the scenes, and Germany didn't like that one bit. Around the same time, the only sea battle of the war happened. Both sides had a new powerful class of battleships called dreadnoughts, but they were so expensive to build that neither side wanted to risk losing them in a battle, so they kept them in port, except for one time when they had a big fight and a bunch of them got damaged, so they didn't try that again. The UK started conscripting men to the army, so they had plenty of reserves, which is just as well because the Western Front was about to get...
Talk about conscripting people. Didn't the British like conscript like really young people, like kids that were 14, 16? You know, the Colombia here in Colombia, there's still conscription. I remember this was right before COVID, so this was February around this time. I went out, and I went out because I was going to school. And you see, because I was right next to a military base, I see like entire like this squad passing by, and people like the military here, they'll just say, "Hey, how old are you?" You say 18. Guess what? They grab you, take you, and they sign you up, just like that. Doesn't matter if you have a say in it, you don't have a say in it. You're going and you're getting script up like that. You can be man your own fucking business. They'll grab you and they'll take you, like that. You know, luckily I avoided that shit because I said, "Oh, I'm 17." Yeah, and it was like right before my birthday, right before I turned 18. You know, luckily I got out of the shit because I said, "Oh no, I'm 17." So luckily that saved my ass right there. And also, I probably, if this should happen again, I'd probably just go and say, "Yeah, sorry man, I can't understand you. I only speak English." Do that. Oh, probably not. That'd probably get me more fucked up here. Back to the video.
Yeah, brutal. The longest and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started when the Germans launched an attack around the French city of Verdun. The French defended it desperately, leading to hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away, so the British started their own long and brutal fight, the Battle of the Somme, with 60,000 British casualties on just the first day.
That's what I was saying in the last
It
video.
was also here that the British first used one brand new piece of
Thanks.
sci-fi technology. The Russians had been getting pushed back further and further into their own territory, but in response to the French call for help, they began a huge offensive, and did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians had been doing, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump in and win the war, and then they got pounded. The Greeks were fighting amongst themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the Prime Minister wanted to join the Allies. After a brief national schism, during which the country split into two, the king finally abdicated and the country reunited. With Allied help, they began a new offensive. In the Middle East, Russia was pushing into Ottoman territory from the north. The British had also made a landing in Mesopotamia to protect Persia's oil fields, and they had also sent a small army up the Tigris River to try to take Baghdad, but the army got sieged in the town of Kut along the way, and eventually surrendered. A new offensive was launched from the south with all-out desert warfare. The offensive was aided by one famous British officer, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, who helped lead the Arab tribes in a revolt that wreaked havoc on the Ottoman supply lines. By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There were mutinies in the French army.
No, personally, we aren't taught much about like the First World Wars or the Second World Wars. At least from what I remember. You know, I definitely remember being in, should I say I was like 12, like maybe had to be, maybe even younger. And I was remember just like history, geography, like the classes were like super long, like from 6 a.m. to like 4 p.m. in the school I was at the time, in the school that I was in at the time. Don't remember a fucking thing that they taught. What I do remember is they taught mainly stuff that was kind of about like computer history. They saw like the civil wars that we had, and that was really kind of it. I don't remember anything else from that. I don't remember fucking anything that I have learned from school. Everything I have learned, I pretty much learned outside of schooling. Like I know how to edit videos, kinda to get my way around with phones, like at least to fix some phones. And I know a decent bit about computers. And all I should have pretty much just taught myself over the last like year and two. well, mainly about phones and computers over the last year, and about editing. I've been editing videos for about 2 years, 2 years pretty much. And I was terrible 2 years ago, terrible still a year ago. I still say I'm terrible now, but the thing is with editors, we constantly improve. So, there's that.
German populace was starving, and the war had...
That's something I say as an editor a lot. As an editor, I also do some freelance video editing. Not much, because the moment you tell someone, hey, I'm a video editor, and they come ask you for a video, and you tell them the rate, you tell them it'll cost them like a month's salary or a 2-month salary here, because of course you need to do that. Or even if you go cheaply, say, okay, I'll charge you a quarter of this month's salary for what someone normally makes, they just back off like immediately.
Had drained all of Russia's supplies. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was, who was going to break first? And the answer was Russia. Tired of not eating, and mad that a crazy magic homeless guy was calling some of the shots, there was an uprising in Petrograd complete with riots and strikes. The riots turned into a full-scale revolution, and a new government overthrew the Tsar. Then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government, and they pulled Russia out.
I'm pretty sure there's a new video on Oversimplified that he did. Well, it's not new, but of course it's the most recent one, where he did touch on the Russian Revolution. I'm gonna react through all Oversimplified and any other videos that get recommended.
Out of the war. This was great news for Germany, who now only had to focus on the Western Front. But there was still one problem. The pesky United States of America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war. America had been selling supplies to the Allies throughout the war, and was getting super rich off the back of it, meaning it was in fantastic shape and was dangerous to the Germans. So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico saying, wouldn't it be crazy cool if you guys attacked America? But the British intercepted the message, showed it to the Americans, and that was the final straw. American troops began shipping out to Europe. This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and the UK to surrender before the fresh American troops arrived. It was now or never, so they started one final attack. They converged their troops and hit hard at the Somme and pushed the Allies back. They hit a second time further north, then again and again. With each hit, the Germans were spending more and more resources, while the Allies were getting better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line and even pushed back. With American troops now arriving in larger numbers, the Allies launched a counterattack, and that was it. The Central Powers were being pushed back on all fronts. Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by the Ottoman Empire, then Austria-Hungary, and finally on November 11, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace treaty, Germany was forced to reduce its military,
Germany calms
accept
down.
war
Germany
guilt,
should be
and pay the bill
ashamed.
for the war. After
Germany just
indescribable
says
suffering
Mullah.
and millions dead, the world learnt its lesson and never had such an awful war again.
For about 20 years.
For about 20 years.
Yeah, there we go.
Instead, the
I mean, look how the
accept
amount of-
war guilt and pay the bill for the war.
It's all here.
After indescribable
70 million dead, 20 million wounded. Like, so much. That must have been 1918 must have been the worst fucking year. I mean, other than the war, there's also the Spanish flu. That shit must have hit hard too. That hit really hard. 1918 was a terrible year. People still complaining about 2020. Man, people here where I live, they don't give a fuck about quarantine. They keep on going out every day. Just recently I saw a video which was put on the news. Like over 240 people, 240 kids, just all out in a party. No mask or nothing. Like, fucking hell. People just don't care, and then they wonder why they get sick. People go out, they party, and then they come back and they wonder, why am I sick? They say, whoa, why am I sick? I barely go out. That bullshit. Anyway, this is it for this reaction video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next video.